when I first saw everyone playing, they were all playing Soul Calibur, and I was just kind of standing behind watching, and somebody said, "You want to play?" I said, "Well, I don't really know how." They're like, "Oh, go ahead and play. Next time, just say you got next." They just welcomed me to play, regardless of what was going on. They just saw I was interested.
Yeah.
And imagine if they just were like, "Oh, she's just some scrub. She's probably just here for whatever and have
Yeah.
whatever." I wouldn't be here today,
Yeah.
and maybe other people wouldn't have either. Just all these little positive things, small positive interactions that you have that make somebody more feeling more welcome, feeling like they can be a part of it, and then feeling like they can also be a community leader and find ways to give back. I think
Yeah.
that's what it is. So now we all feel very comfortable giving back and introducing fighting games to a whole new group of people.
Hello, and welcome to the Absolute Guard podcast.
We're the podcast that chronicles the past and the present of the fighting game community and bring on various perspectives from Arizona. You can find us on Twitch when we go live at twitch.tv/Spiral Series, YouTube at youtube.com/Spiral Series, and on Apple Podcasts and Spotify under Absolute Guard. We also have a Twitter account that we're using now. If you're looking for that, is absolute_guard. So give that a follow, retweet any things that come from that. We appreciate any kind of likes and subscribes you give us. This is episode 14, and my name is Benny, aka Grandmaster B, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host John, who is the technical brains behind this podcast.
Cheers. Yeah, I have been messing around with a lot of technical things behind the scenes. For all of you who have been listening, thank you very much. And I'm sure you've noticed that our theme song has been kind of buggy for the past couple episodes. I figured out what caused that problem, and so you hopefully won't hear that again. hopefully.
Yeah, I was hearing that echo. I don't know if you're hearing that.
You're hearing an echo currently?
I thought I was, but maybe that was something else.
Oh, it's the voice in your head.
I don't know. Yeah, so how's it going, John?
It's good. I have a lot of cool things that I've done this past week, and I've just been itching to share with you. And then what happened this afternoon, something just dropped into my lap. So for our audio listeners, I'm currently holding the Victrix Pro FS12, and the 12,
the bougie cheat box.
The 12 in it is to refer to the number of buttons in it, because it's all buttons and all cheating. It's great. One of these, you could even macro one of these. It's so cool. And it's just been like this thing I've been tinkering with for the past couple of hours and not actually getting the podcast ready.
Nice.
But so far it feels really good. What's new with you, Benny? How was your week?
It's good. Just starting my work week. Got some new glasses. So these are nice. Yeah, they got some nice clip-ons that go with them too. They're magnetic, so that's pretty awesome.
For sunlight and stuff, or
yeah, for the sunglasses. Yeah, so they're blue. They're really blue.
Oh man, you look like you're ready to fly an airplane now.
That's exactly why I got them, because when I was doing a couple of the lessons, they were like, "You really need to get some sunglasses." And, clear skies here. Like I'm closer to the sun, and it's all in my face. Like yeah, so. That's pretty much why I got them.
Very cool.
Yeah. So who do we have on today, John?
So yeah, actually this time I was the one who coordinated the guest. Nefertiti is one of my oldest friends and someone I've known throughout the entirety of my fighting game career. She was there when I joined, and she's still there now. We are also good friends, and we're former coworkers as well. So we actually saw each other at a party I want to say it was like a week ago. Just one of our old coworkers threw a party, and we reconnected and decided that it would be a fun podcast episode. So, without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and bring on Neff. Hi, Neff.
Hi, Neff.
How
How
y'all
you
doing?
doing?
Oh, I'm good.
Cool. So yeah, when I think of Neff, I think a lot about her mentorship, if anything, of a lot of the people in the FGC. I think that throughout my entire FGC career, I've had the opportunity to like bounce ideas off of her, both like for events, but also like for advice on how to approach community members, like, and also just general advice on life. And I've found from talking with other folks that like Neff is that same person for a lot of people, and so she's the mentor figure for a lot of people in our scene. I think you've been around for like at least 10 years at this point, right?
Yeah.
It's just a very, very, very wonderful to have you on.
I'm really happy to be here. I guess I like to call myself a professional pop monster, so I was surprised that I have brought on, but
Nice. Yeah, when I think of Neff, I mean, honestly, I haven't had a lot of interaction with you outside of the FGC. You know, I see you at various events, whether it's, you know, Ranbats or even like some of the legacy events that like Scott has held, or, you know, other things like that. Always seemed kind of quiet, but everybody in the FGC is kind of their own personality. So it's just like, you know, she's always welcoming to talk. Kind of, like I said, it's quiet, kind of soft spoken, but, you know, always comes out to try to support what she can when she can.
yeah,
I think that's another big thing is like you do play multiple games, and so I've seen you support retro games. I've seen you support the Street Fighter series that I'm so fond of. I've seen you like support Marvel too. Like you don't really play Marvel that much, but like you've hung out and supported our scene. Guilty Gear is a big one for you, right?
yes.
Like lots of different games.
Like I said, I'm a professional pop monster, and if I love the game or I like the idea of the game, I don't mind coming out and just, you know, being there to support, or, you know, letting other people kind of like practice off of me, or, you know, whatever it takes to make sure that a community is able to continue. Because if you don't have the numbers, then the game dies. I totally understand that.
Sure.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about the gamer tag that you go by and its origin. That's usually what we start with when we talk to guests for the first time. So if you could give us a little bit of information behind that.
So around my freshman year of high school is when I was introduced to things like Final Fantasy and D&D. I was super into MapleStory.
Oh, really? Me too. That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, I always like kind of play by myself, but I always gravitated toward the wizard characters. And so I wanted to be Black Mage, but of course I can't just say Black Mage. So Ebony Mage. And I thought I was so creative, but every time I try to sign on, there's always another Ebony Mage on. So if you ever try to look for me and Ebony Mage is taken, I'm probably Ebony Mage 87 or something. But that's where it started.
Nice. So did it start with you said with the MapleStory? Like that was your login for MapleStory, or?
Yeah. You know, I didn't have internet for a very long time until junior year of high school. No, not junior, but like freshman year. And then I was like in the chat rooms and stuff like that. So I really had to think about what I was going to sign on as.
Do you have AOL Instant Messenger?
I did.
Nice.
My favorite was Yahoo.
Yahoo?
And of course, it's called Messenger or Skype now, but what was it?
MSN Messenger, and with like the
MSN
weird,
Messenger
the cool.
was
They had
my
cooler
jam.
emotes. I remember those. Yeah. You could have like a big ass avatar as opposed to that little dinky one that AIM gave you, right? That 50 by 50 one.
Yeah, AIM, man, that takes me back. Yeah, on AIM I used the name. It was Benny X Boy. It was just taken up. My friend had given it to me because I was just like, what am I gonna use for this? And he's just like, just put Benny X Boy.
Oh man, that's gonna come back later in a bracket. I just know it. Next time I run a tournament and Benny enters, that's it right there. Benny X Boy.
Yeah. I don't know. Just it's one of those things. I could back in the day I couldn't think of what to do, but that was my AI name back in the day.
Benny Crossboy.
Everybody has to have those X's like Akuma, Super
Yeah.
Hadouken XXX.
XX Sasuke 420 XX no scope. Oh man.
Yeah, so John was saying, in terms of like fighting games, you played various fighting games. Like I've seen you as part of the Alpha games, the Street Fighter or Cross Tekken, Street Fighter 4. You come out to those. What's your origins in terms of like fighting games? Like, did that start at home, like arcades? Like, where did your origin story start with that?
It absolutely started at home. My very first video game ever when I was like 4 years old was Street Fighter 2.
Oh,
And my grandmother's partner was super, super into video games. She still is. And she sat me and my sister down in front of a system, and she picked Ryu for me, and she picked Ken for my sister, and we played together. That was the first video game I ever played. And then my older brother, who's 7 years older than me, he was the one who was playing Street Fighter at home, going to the arcades. That time, if you hear all the stories about the arcade culture, of course, a young girl is not going to be allowed to go there by herself.
yeah.
So I would hear the stories and everything like that. But by the time I got old enough, our local arcade had gotten shut down because of all the fights. And we never got another one. So my older brother left to go live with his father in New York. And for a long time, I just watched. I always preferred to watch. But when he left his system. I was like, well, the only way for me to interact with games now is to play myself. And so me and my sister started to play games, and we played all types of stuff. But that's really where it got started. We didn't have an arcade culture. We didn't have any of that stuff. And then we were so removed from the internet culture. Well, the internet wasn't even a thing.
Yeah.
So I would just play anything that I thought looked cool. I'm an artist, and that is really what always caught my eye with games. So I had to play by myself, play with my cousins. I had to make it work.
Nice. So this is Street Fighter 2 on the SNES or the Genesis?
Yes.
Or? Okay.
Yes, SNES.
Nice.
But-
Cool. Yeah. Like usually when you talk to people, they talk about like their first games. It's like I played Mario, I played Zelda, I played Pac-Man, something like that. So I think other than you, maybe it was my son. Maybe his first game was Street Fighter, if he could remembers that, because I was playing. So it's kind of interesting to hear somebody say this was my very first game was Street Fighter 2, because like a lot of people, that's not their start.
I credit. I didn't even really think about it until somebody else pointed out, but I really credit the lesbians in my life for my love of games and my love of fighting games specifically, because whenever we would be there together playing all in as a group, they were in there playing just as much as the rest of the kids. And
oh, wow.
It just wasn't weird for everyone to play. As we all got older, the girls started to kind of fall away from that, but I just always stayed hooked. And then I always had my sister too. My sister Simone is a year younger, so we played Legend of Lagoon together. We beat games together.
Yeah.
And so even though she loves fighting games casually, if nothing else, she was just somebody else I could play with.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting thing too, because like there's a natural, like, especially like the older generation, there's a natural kind of like divide when it comes to games, because like my parents, they didn't play games at all. Like my dad, like, if we saw something in the arcade, like he's a very kind of practical guy.
Mm-hmm.
So like he was in the army, so if it involved like helicopters or something like that, he'd play that. Anything else that deviates from like realism, like that's not him. Like he doesn't watch sci-fi movies, he doesn't do any of that stuff.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, so he's just like, if you see something like cowboys and aliens, he's just like, oh, what is this crap, right?
I think that's worth noting, because like I think we have like an innate bias on our podcast here, because Benny, you and I have similar upbringings as far as like parental viewings of video games goes, which was like, at best it's a waste of time, at worst it's in my case it was dangerous, because they were like, we don't want you to go to the arcade for a lot of reasons. And so like it's so I always approach this of like, oh yeah, it's a generational thing. Yeah, like the next kids these days, their parents play video games is fine. But we've talked to Scott, who's mentioned that his mom got him into tournaments, and now now we talked to you, Neff, and you mentioned your grandmother got you into it, and that's a huge thing. Yeah.
And my mom, even though she says she's tried Mario and she's just awful, and secretly I'm awful at Mario too. But she always loved to sit, and she said she was just doing her duty as a parent. She would just sit and watch what we were playing and ask us questions, especially the more narrative games, like when we first got Final Fantasy X, and there was the memory card shortage. So we were playing that game 8 hours every single day. We did not cut it off. And my mom would just sit and watch and ask questions, like, especially since that was more like all the characters were talking and the characters moved around on the screen. She just was always like that. Like, my mom's super into sci-fi. She's super into action films.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then my grandma herself, like I would say her favorite movie is Jurassic Park, and she loves those awful sci-fi shows, like on the Sci-Fi Network.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were always gonna be nerdy and always into those things. That's in our genes for real. But
yeah. No, that's awesome. Like, yeah, that having that kind of like support, because it's like my parents didn't deter me from playing games, but like John said, like there was always kind of this like negative thing, and it's just like they would find me, and like where would I be? I'd be in front of the TV with the Super Nintendo. Oh, there you go on that game again. There you go with the Nintendo, and I'm just like, this is what I want to do. Like, I mean, I spent a lot of time outside. Like in high school, I played basketball. Like I was like other than playing like that for an organized team, like I was the envision, or I guess the epitome of like ball is life. Like I played ball like all day. Like I go to school early, an hour, go play ball, play during gym class, play during lunch, come home. I had a basketball hoop outside of my house. Like I was playing basketball all the time, but yet I would always, sit down for a game for a couple hours, and it's just like, oh, there you go on those games again. I was like, what do you mean? I've been outside playing basketball for like 6 hours today. Like, what do you mean?
I wonder if that's also a difference there, because if I was a boy, they would want that for me too, to be outside playing basketball, football. But because I'm a girl, if I sit at home and just read books all day or play video games, as long as my grades are up, it's kind of different, isn't it?
Yeah,
I can see that too.
I don't know. I wonder if that's a thing that has to do with it as well.
I mean, I have a predisposed angle of being like, oh, growing up a girl in the early 90s or late 80s, like you're not marketed to for video games. That's a boy's toy, right? Yeah. So I already have that predisposition. But yeah, you're right in that like video games do fit naturally into what they would want girls to do at the time, which is stay indoors and I guess watch. I don't know. Solve logic puzzles.
I mean, what they really want us to do is watch Ricky Lake. Be on the phone talking to boys after 7, running up the bill. That's what that's what they marketed to us. So I was still not quite following gender norms by playing video games, but I feel like I was less likely to be yelled at for it, just because, like, well, she's not outside, we don't got boys coming over here, she's got good grades, so.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Yeah, you're not out, as they say, gallivanting or doing things like that. So in terms of like playing games competitively, like where did that start for you? Like, was it somewhere here in Arizona?
It actually started just a little bit before Guilty Gear X2 came out, and it just rocked our socks off in every single way. We watched the X play. We drove to Virginia because we didn't have a game store in our town.
Oh, wow.
And we bought X2, and we were just so into it. Like, why don't we have a tournament? So this is me and my friends. We used to hang out at a comic book store all the time, play D&D, and just hang out. And we decided to have our own little tournament series. God, there was this guy named Megan. So this guy named we call him Samwise. His name was Sam, and he lived pretty, like, we were all kind of poor, and he had money, but he would come and beat us and take our money. It would make us so bad, so we had to stop. But that's where it really started. Like, for us. Like I said, there's no YouTube, there's nothing out there that really is showing us how to play well. And we're exploring game facts, and we're like really seeing, oh, you can really play these games at a certain level. Let's all try together and see what that's like.
So this is the year that X2 came out then? Around
Yeah,
when you
when
wanted
was
to start
that?
one of those tournaments?
It's
Yeah,
looking like 2002,
2003,
2002,
2002.
2003. Yeah,
Yeah.
around the time.
Okay.
And then I moved to Phoenix in 2006.
Okay.
And this leads into QCF, and all these people are playing, and they're so good, and they're playing all these different types of games at such a high level to me, and with through QCF, then I started to play like different video games, different tournaments like every month, and then
So
that leads.
real quick, do we want to talk about QCF and what that is for our viewers?
Yeah.
Yeah, so QCF is short for Quarter Circle Forward. It was my college's fighting game club. Basically, if you were a student at the University of Advanced Technology and you had an interest, even passing in fighting games, we would have meetings every week and then a tournament at the LAN party every month. The LAN party was school sponsored. People would go upstairs and play like Halo or whatever. The QCF club had the cafeteria to play.
Okay.
So that's where I met so many people and like lifelong friends, 10, 15-year friends.
Gotcha. Yeah, so that was something that was already established at the school when you got there?
Yes. The founder is Godric Johnson. I don't know if I said his last name right.
That name sounds familiar, actually.
Yeah, he lives in Louisiana now, but he tries to come back every now and then visit. But he started it maybe, I'm so old. I'm trying to remember. He graduated by the time I got there, and
Okay.
when I got there, it was ran by somebody named Justin.
What year did you get there? Out of curiosity.
2006.
Okay, sorry. Thank you.
Okay.
So yeah, so it was a well-established club. It was actually pretty popular too. Most of our technically, I guess there was two sides of it. There was Smash, and then there was QCF, more traditional fighting games.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
we called them the Smash Kids, and they kind of always did their own thing. To be honest, I think Justin always tried to foster community between the two people.
Yeah.
As time went on, the Smash people kind of did their own thing, and traditional fighting game people kind of stuck together more.
Interesting.
Yeah, so kind of mirrored like real life and how things are
Yeah.
in the FGC now, right? Like
Basically.
How big was the club? Like, how many people are we talking here for traditional and Smash?
It's hard to say because when I started, I was just that was the first time I even left the state like that in my whole life.
Oh, okay.
I think on the night I went, I could guess maybe between 25 to 30 people at first.
Okay.
And
So you could fill a classroom with those people then.
you could.
Wow. Okay.
I couldn't really come to the meetings as often as I wanted to because I had to work, go to school, and do all that stuff. But the cool thing about the club is that it was never confined to those weeks. The week of the meeting, you would pass through on your way to class, and somebody would be playing Vampire Savior. You pass through again, somebody's playing Tekken. Pass through again.
Oh, wow.
All three
Okay.
screens are taken up with all these different games. I've skipped classes before. There's times where I was supposed to be going home to go to bed or whatever, and then I'm up because somebody is up in the cafeteria playing something.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
that was really cool.
Nice. So you mentioned Vampire Savior and Tekken. Like, what other games were being played at those sessions or at those LAN parties?
Well, you got to remember too, this was during the dark periods where there really wasn't a lot of things coming out. So when I say we played everything, literally anything. If somebody brought it, I get to the point where I was bringing like my little CD holder with all my games. And if nobody was playing, I just would, what do I feel like playing today? And I put it in. So like that was the first time I really saw higher level play of MVC2. Killer Instinct was played one time. I won that tournament.
Nice.
I'm all excited. Um, when HD Remix came out, that was big for us. Like something new or a new way to breathe life into that game. Like I said, literally any game you can think of, we were trying to play it.
Was there any game in particular that you showed to people in the club that that they hadn't heard of or whatever, hadn't played and taken seriously, and that caught on? Like anything that really stuck?
Well, nothing I did, but the one that the one that like stuck in my heart is Breakers Revenge.
Breakers Revenge.
Like those old like janky Street Fighter clones. It's such a good World Heroes.
World Heroes. No, I remember playing World Heroes in the arcade.
We would just like find games like that. Like somebody would be like, oh gosh, you remember this mess, and we would all try to like figure out who's the cheapest and just have a good time with it. That's kind of how it was. But it was rarely things that I introduced because remember, I'm kind of like a baby fighting gamer still, even though I have a deep love for fighting games. Like all these other people were introducing me to things I never heard of or never seen.
Yeah.
But I think after a while, though, we were all just playing Guilty Gear every single day from.
Oh wow! Okay, so you guys turned
every
into Guilty Gear heads.
Okay. Yes.
Nice. Yeah, you mentioned meeting some of the, some friends that you've, had for 10, 15 years. Would you mind sharing some of the people that you met there?
So there, we call it the house that QCF built. And after a while, after a couple of years, the old guard was kind of falling away, but there was always like a group of 5 or 6 people that always showed up, and they were kind of started becoming the core of the club for a while. I don't remember gamer tags very well, but it would be like Anthony, Nick, Vince. We had 2 McGills, Hat McGill and not Hat McGill.
Wait, you said Hat McGill, as in he wears a hat and there's one that doesn't wear a hat?
Because if you start to try to describe them, you like, I don't know who you're talking about. They
pretty similar.
They obviously didn't look the same, but they had a lot of similar characteristics.
Gotcha.
And T-Dot, of course. T-Dot, which you guys know.
Nice.
I think he's a year younger than me, so I met him. But we didn't have dorms at the school, so we all lived in like apartments, and they all lived. I don't know how it happened. I think they all decided to move in together and get to an apartment, and we would just go over there. One of my favorite stories is if you guys know Combo Sugar Shane.
Yeah.
He moved out there and he was just like, I don't know, throw away the garbage or something. And he said his spider senses routine was like, somebody's playing Marvel. I know it. And he just like follows his senses to their house. and he like knocks on their door and they're like, who are you? And he's like, are y'all playing Marvel in here?
So he'd never met them or anything before.
Never ever.
He probably just heard like storm in like from outside or something.
Probably. Because and that house was cool too because there was a setup in the living room, set up in all 3 bedrooms. It was just they played fighting games all the time, all day. And so when I say like, those are my friends that I have for 10 years, that's the core of it. But
I could definitely relate. Yeah, because like when I went to my first tournament in 2009, like a lot of the friends that I made or that people that I met at that tournament, they become lifelong friends. So, those are people that when I see them, it's just like reminisce about those times or first evos or whatever, those kind of things. So that's cool. Yeah, I mean, T-Dot, you mentioned somebody that I'm sure we're gonna have as a guest sometime. Probably cross-reference some of the stories or some of the things you talked about there with him. He might have a better like recollection about things.
I want to mention this really quickly too, because I don't want him to think I forgot him. Godsaw was a QCF president, and because he was so much older than me, I didn't hang out with him as much. But he was there too. And then after he graduated and after I started being more a part of the bigger fighting game community in Arizona, then I started to hang out with him more. So he was there too. and yeah,
Yeah.
he knows all those guys as well.
Yeah, for our listeners, Godsaw, he was on briefly at the end of the episode with Dragon Ninja. Dragon Ninja was talking about the people that help him out with Z Axis. So Godsaw, aka Rob, is he's been a figurehead in our community too, helping run tournaments. He streams. I don't know if he streams as much now, but he was streaming a lot of various things.
I think he played in one of my Desert Duels events too, for DOA. So he's also a strong player. I am like, it's got me all nostalgic because like I wasn't around in the FGC since like when in the time period you're talking about, but that era of like, hey, there's a house and you can go over there and there's setups going at all times and you just play whenever you want, and like you can just meet a bunch of different people. Like it's not even that like, hey, let's like build lasting relationships. It's more just like, let's just go and play, and you may meet some people that you can form relationships with. You may not, and you may just want to go play. And it, like that kind of like, it's almost like an arcade atmosphere, but in a home instead, I guess. Right. That's got me all nostalgic for like the 09 era too, for sure.
No, it was pretty great. It was sad sometimes too, though. Like we would try to do what we could to like learn about games that were trying to come over. Like I was first introduced to Melty Blood through that club, or all these other like anime games I never heard of. Like somebody would bring in their laptop, like I downloaded this and it's all in Japanese. We'll figure it out.
Probably Melty Blood. Oh no, it's probably like Arcana Heart or something.
Arcana Heart.
Nitro Plus Blasters.
I got okay at Arcana Heart because I was living with some people that was like super anime people, and they actually bought it. So I was like, oh yeah, I don't have to buy it. I can just practice. But
so I'm interested in kind of like the timeline. You mentioned like hanging out with Godsaw and like him being a former QCF president. And so what does the presidency for QCF look like as far as like the people that we know in the FGC today? Like how long were you president, and what responsibilities came with that? Do I have to call you Madam President?
Well, you can if you want. Okay. But how do I put it? So when I first joined the club, it was like 25, 30 strong, and then people in and out all the time. Sure. But as the years went on and people were graduating, it actually got smaller and smaller and smaller. So as far as I understand, the club president also had kind of a lot of control about the types of games we played and where and when and what's going on with the club. So a lot of it was hyper focused on the LAN party and just playing games and just appreciation. When Godsaw was president, which is when I was like really going more often, he was trying to introduce us more to 3D games. But that core group of people were more like Street Fighter people or more 2D. So that was a whole thing. Nick, who also lived in the QCF house, was more into those anime games. Like I said, Melty Blood and Arcana Heart. So we played a little bit more of those.
And Nick was was Godsaw the first, like the earliest president in this timeline, and then Nick was the second. Was this his successor, or?
Oh, I'm sorry. So it was Godric, Justin, Godsaw, Nick, T-Dot, me.
You look unsure.
I am unsure because I was always like, I would come when I could. And that was a long time ago. But I guess, so the whole thing too is that usually the QCF president was a junior or senior. So they had about a year or two to kind of establish how the club would go. And then they would go off and do whatever, adult life. And usually the vice president would be the person to come in next, or just whoever had the time and energy to really mess with the club, to be honest.
Okay.
So, so like, when I became the president, T-Dot was like, I'm moving back to Texas and you're the president now. He said it was going to be somebody else, but they're moving too.
That's a very T-Dot thing to say. He wouldn't front.
No, he would not.
So, out of curiosity, what year was this?
I
2008, 2000.
graduated in 2010. So it was
Okay.
around 2009, 2010. That was actually the boom of Street Fighter 4.
Okay.
That's when I was kind of the president there. But I think T Dot had like the first beginnings, and then I was like vice president or something.
Mhm.
God, like thinking about it all now. But
Yeah.
God, it was, yeah.
What drove you to pursue vice presidency and then presidency? Like I call it the presidency because it sounds so fancy. But
I mean, I literally got drafted, dude.
well, but what about vice president? Did you get drafted into that too?
Um, well, so you need help. You're by yourself, and you have between 10 and 15 people on the LAN parties. You run like between usually about two tournaments that night because it would go from 7 to whenever. So since we had such a large period of time, we would have two tournaments. And so I would be there helping with the brackets, helping to get like notes done, dealing with the student council when it comes to stuff.
The
Um,
student council, like what would they do? Or do we
uh,
want to talk trash? I don't know. That's
no,
all
I'm
the
talking
question.
trash. Half of it was student council issues, and the other half was school issues.
Okay.
So if you had any issues that you wanted to bring up, you would go to the student council when it comes to clubs or things like that. And I wanted the school to fund prizes for LAN party, like cheap prize, like GameStop gift cards or something. And they would promise us things and not deliver.
Oh.
Or like if we needed, like we need controllers, we need systems. Can you please order in this game for us? And you have to deal with the student council for that.
Oh,
I
okay.
got
That's
it.
something I was going to ask about was in terms of like the setups and the games and stuff. So that's something that the actual school provided as part of the club.
Yeah, so and literal setups, not so much. It was more club provided, but the cafeteria had 3 screens in it. Usually, one screen was dedicated to like movies or whatever people wanted to watch in the cafeteria. Another screen almost always taken up by the Smash Kids, but if they weren't, then that's a potential another setup for us, or other people would come in and play single player games, and then we would always have that one screen near the end because it had more space for us to kind of loiter, and that was the one. These are not these like shitty flat screens, laggy. They were not setups as we know them today,
Yeah,
but they were
definitely,
a
definitely.
dedicated place where we could just kind of bring our systems. I think they had a dedicated PlayStation 2 hooked up to it, but
Yeah, definitely more casuals, not tournament standard by any means, right?
I'm kind of curious because in a lot of ways, these clubs represent a microcosm of communities, like esports communities. And so, was there a parallel club for like MOBAs or shooters or anything like that?
I think so. Yeah, like the LAN party was mostly ran and funded by the uh, shooter people. So they would actually bring their rigs to play and
Sure.
figure out the drink situation. Our Hungry Howie pizza situation is much.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. In the chat, Munchie AZ is saying that. When I say Munchie AZ, Aaron is saying that like Hungry Howie's was a big piece of the UAT memory, right?
yeah, that's how we knew that we were going into a recession, right? Because at first, all the free Hungry Howie's pizza you could eat, all the free drinks, we would like leave with our backpacks full of drinks. And then there's a point where they're like, all right, guys, you can only get 2 pieces of pizza and you got to pay 10 cents per drink. And we just about rioted. But,
So,
yeah,
and then just to keep in the theme of answering some of our chat here, so Frank mentions that you played some games on controller and some games on stick, and that does kind of tie into the whole school providing the peripherals conversation too. So I was curious, one, like when did you switch to stick, or if like I think you play both, if I recall correctly.
I do currently play both, and that's because all those years as a child and even up to high school, I didn't know about an arcade stick at all. I always played on pad, everything. when I moved out here, all my friends had these sticks, and it was like all interesting, but I couldn't do anything on them. I didn't even really know how to do supers on pad, to be honest.
Fair enough.
So when Street Fighter 4 came out, back home, a friend had made a stick with actual wood. He said, well, I'm not good at this game. I'm just going to quit. He gave it to me. And that's what I learned off of. It had SandWow parts and everything. It was this cute little stick.
Yep, I remember that one.
Yeah.
It was just like a little hunk of wood. It was like a little brick of wood. It was smaller than, because everybody at that point was like busting out the latest Mad Catz stick or the big TE Cadillac sticks, right? And then you'd have this quaint little like wooden box. It wasn't painted or anything. It was just straight up like 2x4s.
No. my friend from high school made that for me. And
nice.
Well, no, he made it for himself, and he decided to give it to me. That's right. And I couldn't afford a stick anyway, so that was good. And that's how also I was like, okay, I can only stick to charged characters because I can't do any of these like fireballs on a stick. So that's why. And then I also have issues with things like that too. So like for Guilty Gear, it's a 5-button game. King of Fighters is 4 buttons. And that's just like weird for me to get my fingers around. So I only stick to 6-button games on stick or charged characters.
Okay. So in the interest of, like, I kind of want to tie it back to UAT here, or to QCF in particular, where, you know, if I was a club member, so I was a member of your club and you were president at that time, like what, and I said, hey, I'm a pad player, but I'm interested in trying stick. Would you tell me to go buy a stick at Fry's down the street, or would you tell me or would you take it to the student council and see if we can get budget for a stick?
We would definitely not go to the student council to get you a personal stick to learn off of.
Dang it.
No.
What about a community stick for the whole club?
I couldn't even get them to give us $10 like get GameStop cards after a while. Like I said, times were rough during that time. But probably if I had a stick, I would let you learn off of mine or borrow it, especially since I'm half and half anyway, or a community member would let you borrow their stick. We would find a way to get you one on sale because we had people that worked at Fry's. You know, we would figure it out for you, but the school would not help you.
Got it.
At all.
It's funny because you keep saying that times were tough, and I never thought that I would be discussing the 2008 financial and housing crisis on our podcast. But that's real. That's the timing,
it's
right?
Very real. Like I said, like if we were buying games and stuff, we would try to find them online. We were doing the best we could as college students during that time period.
Did you learn how to open a PS2 without having to press the button? Basically, that's what I did to play certain kinds of games on my PS2.
Now, I personally did not do that because I love my PlayStation 2, but I played on other people's.
Yeah, you had to fuck it up in order to do that. You had to take the front off of it and stick a paper clip in there. Ugh.
Yeah. I couldn't afford to replace it if I messed up.
Nice. So when it comes to the gaming club, like that's not. For me, that's not something that was ever like in my high school, college, or anything like that. So, you know, to hear that, you know, that's something that was at UAT, you know, that's pretty cool. Like, do you think that helped, you know, kind of cultivate your love for like the community and like, you know, that, you know, I guess that whole community, that whole like, you know, wanting to be around, you know, like-minded people? I mean, you know, I think that's something that I think, you know, everybody strives for, right? You want to find people that have similar interests to you and things like that.
Absolutely, because up to that point, I always had a deep love in my heart for fighting games as a gaming platform, as an artistic medium. I love the music. I love everything about fighting games themselves. But it wasn't until I moved out here and met so many cool people who played them that I fostered a love for the community.
I'd actually like to talk about that era a little bit. So we talk about almost two different kinds of or communities, right? We talk about QCF, but then, you know, Benny and I are part of the greater fighting game community. And so I'm curious about when those two groups intersected, if at all. And I'm pretty sure they did. Otherwise we wouldn't be talking.
When I first started, in order to get the greater community out, somebody would host at their house or say something about things going on. Like that was the times where I would go to Dorian's or something like that and play different games. But when I was the club president, I tried to push more into getting people aware of the greater community and how to get the resources, how to reach out to others. I remember a slightly disastrous attempt at getting, we were playing like the newest tech and whatever that was, maybe 6. And I just posted on Dust Loop, anybody want to come play Tekken with us? That would be great and fun. And they came out and they were like, what is this setup? What is this?
Okay.
But like I just wanted them to know that those things were available. They were starting to have those documentaries come out too. I Got Next and some other ones about the community itself, and that was something I wanted us to watch together. So, and I would always like say, I'm going to this tournament. If y'all need a ride, I will take you. I want everybody to, because QCF as a club is just it's a school club. The most important thing is go to class, do your work, etc. So there's only so much time and effort you can put into fighting games. But if you wanted that, I started noticing a lot of those people didn't have that outlet, or they didn't know how to find it. So I tried to facilitate that. I tried to let them know that there was something bigger growing out there, especially around Street Fighter 4 time.
Okay, so you were essentially the window to the greater FGC community for a lot of these UAT students, right? A lot of these club members.
I think so. Like Angelic was a club member.
Yeah.
And we played at different people's houses, and we played together. Like I said, he took off on his own. Of course, he just had that drive and desire, but it started playing with us, you know.
For our listeners who aren't familiar with Marvel 3, Angelic is, I think, currently crowned the best player of Marvel 3 in the world. I think he won Reflex, and I think that was what was on the line there. So yeah, he ended up being the best.
I'm not trying to take any credit for any of that, but I will say we played with him at some point.
Yeah. He fostered that growth, because that's the reality of it. This here is that you wouldn't, if that club didn't exist, and if there wasn't like a nurturing or like something, it's like some kind of construct to nurture future fighting game players, like people like Angelic wouldn't be playing fighting games today. And I actually would go so far as to say, like, myself too. And I want to get to the point where we talk about how the FGC and UAT ended up intermingling, because my first tournament was at UAT. And I was curious about like how that happened, because I think it was Dorian and Justin Groton ran bats, I think, or it might have just been Dorian. And where does QCF fit in that equation, I guess?
Well, to start, we have to give some credit to the school itself. They're a very dirty school. They're very open and permissive. So basically, as long as a student is helping to sponsor and be responsible over that, they were open to opening up the classrooms for people to come in. Like I said, they could have been like any other school and said, no, you're not having all these random people come in our school and messing our stuff up. And, but like you just needed a student to sign out and let them know what was going on and be the one responsible if anything happened, and then everybody could come. So that's really where it comes in. If there was no one at UAT who cared about fighting games, then no one would be allowed to come in, right?
Fair enough, yeah.
But I think a lot more should be put on just the people who wanted to run. At that time, we didn't really have a good hub or a good space for everyone to come and play. And somebody had the bright idea, well, why don't we try to use this school? So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good idea too, because like, I mean, we've talked about it previously on other episodes in terms of like the has-bats, right? And that was being held at somebody's house. And for a lot of people, that's a barrier to entry, right? Like people are just like, I don't want to go to this guy's house. Or if you're, if you skew younger, you're some parent and you're like, I don't want to drop my kids off at this person's house. Like if it's a public venue, it's one thing, that's something that I've actually dealt with personally recently with my daughter and one of her friends in high school that wanted to come out to a tournament. And, I mean, it was at, what's that place? Top Golf. And like the first thing I don't know, his dad's like super open protective, and he's just like, well, they serve alcohol there. And I was just like, yeah, but it's a place of business. Like, they're not going to serve minors alcohol at Topgolf. Like, are you crazy? Like, that's, versus, it being at somebody's house. But still, that idea of a public venue, like, that's a good way to get people in too, because it's just like, where is this being hosted? Oh, it's being hosted at the University of Advancing Technology, and it's just like, oh, okay, that's that place down here in Tempe or whatever.
Yeah.
That's something that people would be more open to attending.
Can I
Right.
tell a story that I don't think I've ever told anybody before? This is a fun one. So I mentioned my first tournament was at UAT, right? It was one of the tournaments that Dorian threw, and I actually mentioned that to Rick on one of our previous episodes as well, because he was one of the people that welcomed me. So what had happened is, like, I had been playing fighting games and watching streams and stuff, and hadn't actually like played competitively, but I had a friend online who wanted to get into it, and we found out we lived in the same state, so that was cool. That guy ended up being Reese Gilder. I don't know if anybody or Tyrese Gilder, for folks who know about him, freestyle. But he told me one day, he's like, hey, if you go to shoryuken.com and you check these forums, like, you can find that they're holding an event at this university. And I remember saying, yeah, let's do it. And then I started driving there, and it was just like 5 minutes from where I lived, because I lived in Tempe as well. And I lived down the street from UAT. And I remember getting like halfway there and turning around, and I said, I'm just going to go to the mall instead. Or I got to like the 10 and baseline, and I turned around because I was like, I don't think I can do this. And a lot of it was me thinking, like, I didn't know how to meet a new group of people. I didn't know how to, I didn't know what it would be like in a competitive atmosphere, if I would be good enough, if I had the right stick to match this group of people, that kind of stuff. Right. And, the fact that it was at UAT kept me like grounded a little bit, because eventually I did turn around and I said, you know what, I'm going to go back and go to UAT. At the worst cases, I can fucking leave. And I could get to the parking lot, decided that wasn't enough, that was still too much to me, and leave. Like, I could do that because at least it was a business and it had a parking lot. So it's basically like, I don't think that if that relationship, if QCF didn't exist and between the FGC, like, I'm not sure if I would be playing fighting games today. I don't think we'd be talking today. So all that to say is that the effort that you put towards making sure that there was a spot for us, Neff, you made it so there was a spot for me, and like a metaphorical spot in the FGC for me. And so I'm very grateful to you for that. But that's a soapbox.
It's starting to get real dark in my. Let me cut this light on.
I was just gonna say, man,
that wasn't a dark story.
I was just saying, I was like, you got a light that you can turn on, because it's like.
Oh, now I can see your shirt. Is that a Gretzko shirt?
Oh yeah.
That's tight. That's tight.
It's supposed to glow in the dark, but I don't know.
We actually have footage now of that not working, so you can use that to get your money back.
It's funny you mentioned that, John. Like, finding your place, like, in the community, or like your where you started, that kind of thing. Because, like, I think about that a lot of times too. Because, like, when I went to my first tournament, I heard about it on the radio, of all things, right? The internet's the thing, and you have all these CDs or whatever, aux cables to listen to in your car. And I just happened to be driving one day to work, had the radio on, and it was just like, come out and Street Fighter tournament, and I was just like, what? I was like, there's a Street Fighter tournament at this place? And, like, of course that leads me down the rabbit hole of looking at a website and all this other stuff. And it's just like, what if I didn't have the radio on at that time? Like, where would I have found that? Would I have found out about all this and the community and all the friends and stuff that I've made? And I'm just like, I just happened to have the radio on that commute day, of all things. And it's just, it's crazy when you go back and kind of think about those kind of situations.
There's an angle you can take from it and being like, okay, yeah, like if a small thing hadn't happened that day, then life would be completely different. And you can chalk it up to chance, right? But then I think I don't even want to call it, like, almost like the romantic thing about this is that a lot of times it's about somebody actually put the time and effort into making that welcoming first impression. And so in my case, like, I I grew up after that, and I ended up like going to hazes and stuff, and being able to be in those environments where it seemed really difficult. But that was only because I had some kind of doorway to walk through to get to that point. And
Yeah.
so like everybody, I think everybody's capable of like being part of the community, but having that welcoming hand, or having that, or setting up that environment to reduce the amount of intimidation some people would feel, at least for me, it resonated quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
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 Like imagine I'm fresh off the airplane. I'm not to say I'm not used to hanging out with guys, but I'm in a completely different state.
Yeah.
I'm smaller than most people. And when I first saw everyone playing, they were all playing Soul Calibur, and I was just kind of standing behind watching. And somebody said, "You want to play?" I said, "Well, I don't really know how." They're like, "Oh, go ahead and play. Next time, just say you got next." They just welcomed me to play, regardless of what was going on. They just saw I was interested.
Yeah.
And imagine if they just were like, "Oh, she's just some scrub. She's probably just here for whatever and have
Yeah.
whatever." I wouldn't be here today,
Yeah.
and maybe other people wouldn't have either. Just all these little positive things, small positive interactions that you have that make somebody more feeling more welcome, feeling like they can be a part of it, and then feeling like they can also be a community leader and find ways to give back. I think
Yeah.
that's what it is. So now we all feel very comfortable giving back and introducing fighting games to a whole new group of people
Yeah,
at this point.
exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
not to say that there's not, bad characters and bad situations and stuff like that that's in the community. I mean, that's something that's, you can find anywhere, but that's something I see for myself when it comes to running tournaments or, seeing new people. Like, I'm that type of person to kind of like try to reach out, and that's my way of giving back. Is just like, how can I introduce more people to this? Because it's like you said, like it's a matter of like everybody wants to find something that they like or similar interests, things like that. Like that's something that I tell my son all the time. He's in middle school, and it's just like uh don't change for to be liked by people, right? Like if you like Smash Brothers or if you like this, then just say that and own it, right? And the
Absolutely.
people that like you and people that like that, those are going to become your friends. And the people that are really your friends, whether they like it or not, it's not going to matter, right?
Right.
So it's just like don't be afraid to kind of like certain things.
Yeah.
uh,
Totally.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I was for a long time. I just liked a bunch of things that people didn't really get. I would never say that I was being teased or picked on exactly. I wasn't exactly popular when I was in school, and I've always been a quiet person. But around the fighting community, I feel comfortable being quiet. I feel comfortable just being myself and liking any kind of games that I do or don't like, or you know. And some of my favorite games are like those old man games. I
yeah,
love them so much, and I get to love them. Like nobody's gonna like cuss me out or say that I'm not good enough or I'm not
yeah,
professional enough to hang out just because I'm not all that competitive.
yeah.
I guess one thing I wanted to ask you too is, you know, at least for the Arizona scene, did you ever run into any unique challenges that you would like because you're a woman? That like as far as the Arizona scene, did you feel like you had more to prove or anything like that?
Definitely always felt that way. As for whether or not other people made it seem that way, you know, I don't think so. That's the hard part about being the minority in any situation, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't actually matter what people are saying or thinking. You have to operate in a way that protects yourself, and you have to be aware of things where things can kind of go left or right.
Mhm.
So I did feel motivated to be more. After I got older, I didn't care that as much, but I
Yeah.
did feel, and in the beginning, like I said, I came with no knowledge of the competitive scene, no barely any skills. I developed some okay fundamentals of footsies, but I didn't know how to do any like special moves. And
Mhm.
I was really pushing myself to learn stick, pushing myself to learn how to do links, pushing myself to do okay in tournaments because I can always feel like that outside pressure. What if people look at me and they say, "Oh, of course she's not good. She's just here." I was just always afraid that somebody somewhere would like out me. What do they call that? Like imposter syndrome.
It's imposter syndrome, yeah.
Yeah.
Benny, did you ever get that too? Like where, like for at least in my case, it's not the same as being a woman by any means, but like for me, it'd be like, hey, you're Asian, you're gonna be good at Street Fighter, right? And then I'm like, shit, I'm gonna let them down.
No, it's funny. My community in Alaska, like it's majority Asian, so like I didn't,
Okay, yeah.
I didn't really have that. I did have imposter syndrome because like my very first tournament, I did get second, but then like when we started Rand Bets, I think I don't know 4 months later at Play and Trade, like I got humbled hard, and like I would play terribly, I'd go 0-2, 1-2, and I'm just like. I would think all the time, like, man, was that just a fluke? Like, did I just get second place because these guys didn't know me, or, am I just not good at this, or whatever? But I would have it in that sense, but not in terms of like being the Asian in the group or anything.
Fair enough. That was like there were a couple of top players that I could think of in our scene that had told me that right away. Be like, "You're Asian, you're good." Like it would be a compliment. They'd be thinking they were like trying to boost me, but it would create this additional
Right,
baggage.
because like, well, what if I lose? What if you like sweep me and I'm just sitting there in the corner?
Yeah,
it's like
basically.
yeah, exactly. It's that whole thing. Like, oh, there's a black guy. Oh, he's good at basketball, right? And then like he's not good at basketball. And he's just like, well, what's wrong with you? Like, man,
yeah,
like I can see that for sure. Like, yeah, if somebody put that on you.
I swear we're gonna have one episode one day where we just talk about race. We're gonna have Nam and Neff on. We're just gonna go, and that's gonna get us canceled.
Yeah, that'll be the end of the podcast right there.
That's the finale.
I think the beautiful part though is that I came out here and I looked around and it's just all different colored people who like.
Yeah.
So here's the thing too. So when we would go to the LAN parties, there's one shade of people playing the computer games and one shade of people playing other games. But if you look at the fighting club, we were just colors of the rainbow. We were all there playing together. I think that's a beautiful and bad thing about fighting games. All we care about is, are you good?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
There's a side to fighting game community I think that's really it's more representative of the demographics of America in that. I'm gonna go in here on this one. Poorer demographics, minorities, right?
Yep.
They're going to be more. They're going to gravitate more towards the arcades, and so we're going to it's just going to naturally create more of a conglomerate of different races, I think, versus like PC gaming, like StarCraft or even Smash Brothers, I would say, which Smash Brothers has a requirement of buying X amount of controllers, a GameCube, and a television, right? Like all that pales in comparison to a quarter as far as cost goes, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard stories, like I said, I play so many different games, but I only own like 10, because I could just always go somewhere and play. If somebody else invested in the controllers, like just like when you talk about the stick, if somebody really wanted to learn stick, they didn't necessarily have to buy one.
Yeah.
Just as if you had a community around you, you could do anything. Versus you do have to have your own rig and your own stuff to play those computer games.
So it creates a barrier of entry, and then that was unfortunately correlated to race based on national shit that happened.
Yeah, well, that's the thing too. Like you talk about, like StarCraft and PCs, right? Like if we wanted to play StarCraft together, we each have to have our own PC, our own setup, that kind of thing, right? Now, if I have a fighting game. If I want to play with somebody, I need to bring somebody to me, back in those days, right? It wasn't, let me just log online and let me go play. It was just like, either you're playing arcade mode and playing by yourself, or it's just like, I need to cultivate a scene. I need to make friends that play this so that they can play with me. So that's something different. The Smash scene has that too, but I mean, it's something that's kind of unique to those type of games. It's like, you have to bring people to you and, find people like you to play with.
And doesn't that foster community in itself? Because
Yeah,
there's so much toxicity on those computer games. Like they're all just sitting there by themselves thinking that they're the best.
yeah,
I mean, you can do that out here, but like when you're looking at somebody, you're gonna watch what you say. You know, you're
yeah.
not exact, especially too. You're on somebody else's setup in somebody else's house. You
Hmm.
know, you have to get some communication skills. You know.
Yeah, that social aspect for sure.
I mean, you could also just lock up the entire world for 2 years, and then and then people could just try to figure out like be online warriors only. Oh
Yes,
man.
but
Ugh. Sorry, I'm sorry. That was a little overly contrarian. I'm just like, ugh.
it's okay, John. We know you miss us.
No, that's the
That,
thing though. Is like we talk about like how fighting game players handle playing online, right? And it sucks. Like 'cause it's not a team game, so there's no social aspect to it. You're literally just logging in, getting your shit kicked in, and then having to think about that by yourself. It sucks. And so,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
Unfortunately, that's one of the reasons why I've kind of had to step back. I just don't have the same fire for competitive fighting games anymore because, you know, at the core of it, I was hanging out with my friends. I was getting out of the house. And
hmm,
now it's like, oh, in order for me to get really good at Strive, I got to sit and play this by myself for hours. Like, I don't
Yeah,
know. I might be able to go to a tournament here or there. I don't know.
yeah.
yeah,
So,
My focus has definitely changed because like before I was introduced to the community, like I had no problem, fighting games online, whether that was Street Fighter 4 or was it Hyper Fighting back on the 360. Like I played thousands of matches on that, even though it was laggy or whatever. It was just like I have a way to play people. But then when I was introduced to the community and playing offline and being social and being around people, like that is something that I definitely prefer over the online aspect. Because like even today, like yeah, we have our little group chat, we have our little training groups and stuff like that we play with, and it helps to be, we're in a Discord chat or whatever. That helps in some ways to kind of foster that community or that social aspect. But like for me, like yeah, I definitely look forward to those offline sessions, even if it's whether it's the arcade cabs at like TGZ or just regular sessions at somebody's house or whatever. Like
yeah.
those are definitely those kind of situations that I would prefer to be in myself.
it's the road rage problem, right? Like people are dicks if you like behind the wheel of a car when they're separated from everybody else, but when people are just talking in person, that's way more polite.
Yeah,
I I worked customer service for 10 years. I know that for a fact. People are awful when you work on the phone, but like if you're, well, I mean, they're awful too, but it's harder for them to be awful to you if they have to look you in the eye.
yeah. There's definitely exceptions, but yeah, yeah, I've been in that call center world too. Like yeah, when people are on the phone, that's a whole different thing.
So something just popped into my head. We were talking a little bit about the lower income and kind of like times being tough, right? And
Mm.
so, Neff, I'm curious about some of your opinions for the modern day issues that occur in the fighting game community, like um, specifically around the procurement of new equipment. And what I mean by that is like everyone's talking about the refresh rates on monitors right now. Everyone's talking about hitbox right now. And so, like, do you feel like I'm trying not to lead the witness here? Um, do you feel like the barrier of entry in today's fighting game community, financial barrier of entry, is greater, or is it kind of the same as when you started, or is it
I
somewhere in the
think
middle?
it's the exact same as when I started. It's the fact that we're more consumerist, right? Especially the younger generation.
Yeah,
Oh, they want to come with the shiny new hit box. That's what everybody's talking about.
Yeah.
I got one
If
of those.
you, I mean, you can come in with a busted old stick and still be good. That's not stopping anybody, you know. Like I said, we played for years on those crappy TVs. We wanted to play. We didn't care how we played it. That doesn't take away from the skill that we developed, from the studying we did, from the nights that we spent up standing in line waiting for our turn. You know, it doesn't matter if you have the newest thing or not. You're playing. You're still playing a game. Uh,
Yeah.
it, but people want to look good now. There's all these sponsorships. You got to wear the right shirt, the right pants, have the right stick, know the right people.
There's a lot of networking. Yeah.
I mean, you can do that if that's what you're into, but I think it's all mental,
Yeah.
Play with
Yeah,
what you have,
Yeah, it's like you said, like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, are you good? Like, it doesn't matter if you have the bougie cheap box and you walk in. Like, if I still body you and I'm walking in with my Hori Rap 4 that I've had for 5 years,
Right.
It's like, cool, you have that nice hitbox, but whatever.
I wonder if that's because like nowadays there's a lot of streaming and a lot more is put on like, so we talked about the PC thing as well.
Yeah.
PC, you can buy yourself some skills, right? You can't, you can't overclock your hands. You can't buy a new RAM for your brain.
Yeah.
You have to get in there and figure it out regardless. So.
And do you think that like a PC as a barrier of entry is okay for the current fighting game community? Do you think it's prohibitive?
I guess it depends on if you want more grassroots or if you want more of the esports, and that's a whole thing that we have right now. We're trying to decide what parts of esports we want to keep, what parts of grassroots we want to keep.
Yeah.
Like I remember on one of the podcasts we were talking about how Gamer became out of nowhere. PR Raw came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
You don't get that if you start to make it 100% esports. And I think that's why the idea of Ryu as a character, as a symbol, is so important. I think we should hold on to him because he doesn't have nothing. He literally has nothing but the little sack on his back.
Yeah, the knapsack.
We can hold on to him because that means that no matter what is going on in your life, no matter what's happening, you can put in the time and effort and work and sweep and be good.
Yeah.
It's about the challenge and the journey as opposed to like the destination, which is everybody wants the fame from the esports, right? It's about the walking barefoot, as Nam would put it in the chat here.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's an interesting perspective, John, because like you said, I mean, there is, this kind of push towards more optimal setups with the monitors, more optimal controls with the hitboxes, those kind of things. And yeah, Neff brings up a good point because it kind of depends on where kind of the community heads, because if we continue with the console setups and stuff that's, I guess, it's not optimal, it's just like how much of the community is going to continue to support that, because we've seen it on Twitter where people will complain about, oh, they play this on PS4, the monitors weren't set up correctly, this and that, right? And that becomes a problem for a lot of people, especially like if you have invested in that PC stuff and you're used to playing on 120 hertz with a hitbox and all this stuff with PC, and then you go to the offline tournament, it's just like, are you going to be happy to support those kind of events going forward, or you're going to be like, well, I only want to support the events that are going to be held on PC and up to these standards, and again, that goes to that whole esports and kind of grassroots thing.
That's kind of my angle on this too, is that to me that stuff does matter quite a bit. Like the refresh rate from going from 60 to 120 or 60 to 165, like it's huge. And then the hitbox, like I play on it and it's objectively better than a stick, and it's like it gives me an objective advantage. And so like I can see a lot of those advantages, but I'm also like really worried that it's turning into pay to win for that reason,
Right. I mean, the good thing about fighting games is that there are so many things that go into being a good player. I liked how in the beginning the goal was to be arcade perfect, as arcade, we had a standard that we could all try to reach, right?
Yeah.
But nowadays things are so complicated. All the consoles run differently. All the PCs run differently. It's going to be, that's just something that's going to be difficult for us to get past, especially if it's preventing you from playing at your best, right? So I definitely understand the concern, but I think we have to just try to remind ourselves what the goal is. The goal is for everybody to play kind of like on the same playing field so that the things that do make you a good player shine through, not just your technical skills, but your mind, your ability to adapt, your ability to have that endurance to be a tournament player.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it makes me wonder like whether there could be like a kind of like a fragmentation of the community too, because like you said, if John's optimal setup at home is not the same thing that's at the venue,
Yep.
He might be like, well, you know what? I don't want to participate in those events because, I can't play up to my potential, right? Like, whereas,
Yeah.
it'd be one of those situations like, yeah, I beat John in tournament on a PS5 or whatever console, we're playing on. And then he's just like, you know what? If I was playing on a PC on an optimal setup, like you wouldn't get away with half the shit that you're doing, right?
We watched Evo 2022 with the Street Fighter 5 finals in particular. Tokido, he played Urian in a matchup because he was playing on PS4. He chose to play a different character entirely because he couldn't play Luke the way he wanted to on PS4, as far as whip punishing goes and stuff like that. And that's like there's also other stuff about like how the chairs were, but it is like the
I don't mean to laugh. I'm just
There's something, right?
This is the guy that does the measuring tape from the monitor. So.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm not even like an OG, and I'm just like, the chairs. Are you kidding me, Tokido? Come on now.
Like, come on, it's not these metal steel folding chairs. Come on,
sit on the floor. We've done that.
Oh man, I can't imagine what that would be like if it was your job, being like, I want to ask for a bowl of only green M&Ms, but I feel like
that's
I have
true,
to because that's basically what it is.
Job. Yeah,
it's a writer.
That is his job, right? Because he's a sponsored player. Like I think he even said like he quit his day job because he can afford to live off of his sponsorships or whatever that he's doing now. So
I mean, that's a beautiful thing in one way, but like I said, that's getting more esports. At that point, it's like, do we just say that we only have sponsored teams and all the riffraff can have their own stuff? That's what I'm terrified of, and I know a lot of people are too.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's kind of where I guess that's kind of where I was leading in terms of like the fragmentation, because like, I think in a lot of ways, because like you see these like events like Red Bull Kumite and stuff like that, right? People see those and they're like, oh, why is this an invitational? Why can't this be open? And it's just like, well, I think there's room for pretty much all of that. Like there is, I mean, like it's going on today, right? Like you have the Kumite, the Red Bull Kumite, you have the what's that called, E-League, where it's like different sponsored players and teams or whatever. That's a different kind of format too. And I think there'll always be room for those kind of grassroots events. And like, whether, some of those elitist players are going to want to participate in those. I mean, honestly, like I wouldn't care. Like, I mean, yeah, it brings a certain level of clout and whatever to your tournament to say, hey, so-and-so is joining this tournament. Like, everybody does that to promote their events. But at the same time, it's just like, if they're going to do all these other events for these other sponsored players and the elitists per se, like I'm still going to be here to host a casual event for the everyman in the community, right? And I think there's going to be people that are going to continue to support that because there's not that barrier of entry, or it's maybe they won't take it as serious. I don't know. Like I would still make it a big deal for myself. But yeah, I could definitely see where there could be a fragmentation, and then there's it could be supported by all the different people in the community.
I think that's go ahead, Jeff. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, just really quickly, and that would be easy or whatever if the fighting community was a money making machine and they didn't really need us. They need us as little people. Yeah. So that's why it's such a difficult thing. Like they can't sell peripherals the same way they sell computer parts, and our pots are probably not gonna be as big.
It's a tough one because when you think, like if you take that statement and unpack it, right? Like as far as them needing us, like what do they need from us exactly? Like they need, like I'm the sucker buying the $400 Victrix stick, right? But then I'm also the guy that watches the streams, and so sometimes it's not even like, hey, they need us to buy a bunch of stuff. They just need eyes, right? Because then that turns into ad revenue and stuff like that. I think we're actually at a point right now where I look at Sajam and I look at Smug in particular, because both of those people do not need to do their old jobs anymore because they make more money streaming. In Sajam's case, commentary, and Smug's case, player, right? And so these invitationals that we're talking about are going to eventually be catered direct, like specifically to those people where it's like I've heard it already from some pros where they're like, I lose money if I go to a major. And that blows my mind, right? Because like we're at the point now where I think they just like for a proper invitational to take off, like the big money has to be there, and they're not there yet. The rates for our players have risen, but the actual like money itself hasn't. So I don't think we're at that point where we're just going to start locking people out yet. I do worry about that. That was one of my first problems when I was like, oh shit, we're going esports over grassroots. What are they going to do about the open tournament format? But even like Red Bull Kumite or Capcom Cup or anything like that, they all have LCQs, all last chance qualifiers. So they are like a hybrid open tournament too. I am not by any means promoting esports here because I think that there's been a lot of like negative things that have come to our scene because of that. But I will say they've done a better job at it than I thought they would at when they initially rolled out the Pro Tour shit.
Yeah. I'd have to agree. Like, yeah, there's I don't know. It's definitely a tough situation. Like, I mean, like you said, when it comes to the streamers, or those kind of people. Like, yeah, I could definitely see how going to like majors and that kind of thing would be losing it. You're losing money because like if the prize pots aren't scaling up, then you're paying for airfare, you're paying for hotel. I mean, even if you are a sponsored player, yeah, they might cover some of that. Yep. But then it's just like you've got to attain a certain status, hit a certain place to even be in the money. So it's not like, you're not recouping, your own expenses for food or whatnot when you get there. So yeah, that's a big kind of hurdle there.
So we've been talking money for pretty much this past like 10 minutes and stuff. And I wanted to try to so every episode lately, I've been having a game for our guests. And in full transparency, Neff, when I say game, the last 3 games that I played with like Neff and Nam and company, I just made those up on the fly. And so I'm about to do that right now. I didn't actually have a game prepared. But we are both Chun-Li players, and I would love to just like maybe spend like 5 to 10 minutes gushing about Chun-Li with you. So I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite iteration of Chun-Li in any fighting game?
Do you mean like gameplay wise, or does it matter?
Doesn't
it could
matter.
be either gameplay,
favorite
aesthetic. Yeah.
Because I always, I got to remind you, I'm more of a pop monster and I'm more of an artist. I think that, oh man.
That's a tough one. She's got some good sprites in every game.
Yeah. It's a tie between the CVS2 sprite and the Third Strike one. Animation on her is absolutely gorgeous on all of those. The movement, the feeling of power, and also the strength of the character in the games as well. I know some people they hate Chun and Third Strike, but I'm happy about it.
So when we say feeling of power, do you associate a specific move from Chun-Li with the feeling of power?
Maybe standing strong, I don't know.
Yeah. I like that. I like all of her normals for the record, yeah.
And her sweep is great too. I love her sweep in all games.
It's a unique one too, because it's like like most of the Shoto ones, they like kind of do like a whipping motion, but for Chun, she just sticks it out there.
Yeah.
I remember in ST, I played Chun because you could do standing strong, but then you could also just hold forward and standing strong, and then that would be a throw. And so I would literally just hold forward and just mash,
her throw
right?
is so disrespectful in that game too. It's beautiful. I love just like throwing people out of the air and they're like, what the fuck? Yeah. So.
All right, let's go a little deeper. Favorite super art, any kind of technique, or actually that doesn't have to be a super art. Let's say any special move. What's your favorite Chun-Li like signature move?
I like diagonal Kikoken. I don't remember what it's called, but the one that
goes up.
Yeah, and Alpha 3, that's like a big core part of my gameplay. It's a fun looking anti-air. I don't know if it's the best. It's just fun.
Sorry, as in like she like sticks it up, like the Kikoken up.
Oh, did I say Kikoken? Oh, I mean
He's talking about the up kicks, like the up kicks.
Yeah, up kicks.
Oh.
Yeah. I forget what it's called.
Nam put it in our chat. Tenshokyaku.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the names like that.
Me neither. I just know spinning bird kick. So instead of it being a normal spinning bird kick, it's
Yeah, it's like the
diagonal.
upkicks or like the ones that are in like I think that's an ST, right? Is that in ST also?
In some versions of ST, yes.
Oh, okay.
Not in all of them.
In ST, it's a charge, and most is a charge.
Yeah.
But the problem is it would overlap with spinning bird kick, which was also charged down up, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So you didn't see it
could
in
do
some
that.
games, like in Third Strike, she didn't have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember the move names. That's funny because like
That's why
I play Hearthstone and like it's funny because like I couldn't name you the character or the move, but I'll tell my son I was like it's the one that's like 3 mana and does this much attack and does this has much this health, and he'll be like, oh yeah, it's this, and I'm like, okay, how do you remember that? There's so much.
I'm gonna
that's
nerd
my
out.
favorite.
I'm gonna nerd out real quick here. So 10 is Neff, you probably know this shit too, because I'm gonna listen to anime more than actual fighting game knowledge. 10 means heaven, Sho means rise, Kyaku means kick. So it's a rising heaven kick, right? And Shoryuken, rising. Sho is rise, Ryu is dragon, Ken is punch. So
yeah, when I went to look up what Nam put, yeah, that's exactly what it says. It says Ascension, Heaven Rising Legs, or also known as Heaven Soaring Legs.
My favorite thing about the fighting community is that we don't learn the names. We make up stuff. Like you're gonna paint the fence with bison. And we just make up stuff.
Butt
throwing
slam.
rocks. Yes.
Yeah.
For our audio listeners, my fiance is in our chat right now calling us nerds. Oh man. It's funny actually, because me and my fiance just got done watching Cyberpunk, the latest anime, and I know this isn't remotely fighting game related, but it is anime related, and it's an anime by Trigger, and so it's like the most Japanese thing you could ever see. Oh man, it's so good. Oh, by the way, Tensho Kyaku is coming back in Street Fighter 6. I don't know if you knew that. The up kicks? Yeah, that's the up kicks. It looks dumb. It makes me want to play the character. It looks so good. So Chun-Li's traditional weaknesses in any fighting game is anti-airs. Are you actually? Am I right in thinking that, Neff? From your experience too?
You're kind of. The problem is not that she is weak anti-airing. She has too many options, and you have to think too much about them.
So yeah, when someone's jumping at you, right? You're like, okay, I have standing jab, stand short, stand back roundhouse, jump fierce, jump roundhouse, right? You have all those different options. Each of those is situational, and it's like, oh, you have to pick that. You have to basically, rock paper scissors on that, right?
Wrong,
roll a dice. Yep. And so what they did, it looks like in 6, what they've done is they've taken away all of her anti-air normals, which kind of bummed me out. But then they gave her it's down kick for Tensho Kyaku. It's not a charge anymore.
Okay.
It's a DP. It's down kick, and it's invulnerable to jump attacks. So they literally took her one weakness and said, let's just give her the It's so dumb.
What would bring Neff back to Street Fighter?
Good Chun. Good. She's gonna be so good. I'm so excited for that iteration of Chun.
That was gonna be a question for me because like everybody, like I said, like everybody knows you for playing Chun-Li in Street Fighter, and she is in Street Fighter 6. Like I was gonna ask, like, are you gonna play Street Fighter 6, and if so, are you gonna play her, or is there another character that interests you?
Capcom's just been hurting my heart so bad, just beat me up. And then, my new husband, Guilty Gear, has just been wonderful. It gave me an anime, gave me a CD soundtrack. But my wife is over there. So, I have mixed feelings. I'll probably buy it and try it out and see how I feel. And if I buy a game and my main is in it, I'm gonna try to play my main. I tried with 5, and Chun-Li wasn't working out for me for whatever reason, and I tried to go with Vega, and that didn't work out. So that's what I'm learning, that I just have to feel the characters out. I know who I want to play, and if that person is not available to me for whatever reason, then I might have to step back. So that's how I feel about 6 right now.
What would a character have to have? Just in general for Neff to play that character. It doesn't have to be 6, just in general.
You just got to go back to my roots, those old man games, right? Yeah. I need you to have very strong normals, good footsies, pretty decent damage, because based on my skill level, it's hard for me to do a lot of damage, like with a bunch of techniques.
I'm right there with you.
So
Okay.
those are the things that I need. Like I play Venom in Guilty Gear. I did when he was available, and it's just my favorite thing about him is I could keep people away, so I don't have to try so hard to get the 20 hit combos or faultless defense, all these crazy things that really go on in Guilty Gear at top level play. I can kind of play medium by just being solid, good footsies, good spacing, things like that.
I will tell you that like I've gone from playing like a heavy mix-up character to playing more like in your line of your style of playing, which is just good normals and be an impressive wall, right?
I have to lean more on those things because I'm weak with I'm weak with my technical skills. Trying hard to try to like wrap my head around certain things like 50/50s and so forth.
So I'll tell you, as somebody who like started on that journey and then has veered away from it, like on the technical side, like when you learn that stuff, you only do that stuff and you don't think about. I spent probably a good 3 years playing fighting games, not thinking about what my opponent did. I was just like, I just gotta knock him down. It'll be fine. If I knock him down, then they just have to guess, and it'll be fine.
Like Benny, isn't Honda and Dalsim a little similar?
I don't think like it's funny that you guys mentioned like John mentions going from a technical character to something more simple, because like I feel like I did the exact opposite.
Yes, you did.
Going from Honda in 4, and then everybody's like, "Man, you're gonna play Dalsim in 5," and I'm just like, "Well, I don't like anybody else. Honda's not there." And even when Honda was released, it was like so late in the game that I was just like, one, I wasn't playing it anyway, and then two, it was just like it was so far removed from what like my muscle memory and what I was used to that I didn't want to be like, I don't really like how he plays. So for me, like, yeah, it's like John said, like I get this, you learn all this technical stuff. Like I learned all these like teleport mix-ups and all this other stuff. And like my whole game plan was just like, okay, let me get this knockdown, and then I can start doing all this crazy stuff that people just hate. Like they just hate with Dalsim. And it's just like I think the biggest thing was like when I was at Game On Expo like a couple months ago, like just playing those like casual players, and like, nobody plays Dalsim, right? And then it's just like, oh shit, this guy's playing Dalsim. And you knock him down, and then it's just like, all right, time to guess, asshole. And it's just like, am I going to the front or the back? Like, hit him in the front.
Those people you were playing Those people you were playing didn't even know you could block backwards. I'm telling you, and you just cross them up.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's just one of those things. Like I got so used to like just kind of playing in that mode, whereas like playing a more simple character, like you said, like when I played Honda, it was like because he had high health, and because it's like it allowed me to make more mistakes, and because he did high damage, because it's just like I'm not a execution monster, and it's just like, if my normals do good damage, like I can chunk away your health better than for me to be doing Viper combos or all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Who do you play in Strive now, Neff? Out of curiosity.
At first I was playing Kai for a while, but Bridget came out, and I really enjoyed them. I haven't had a chance to really put a lot of time and effort into them, but I know once I'm ready to pick them up, it'll be better. It'll be fine. Yeah.
I feel like there's some venom in there as far as like the traps and stuff like that. Yeah.
And like I said, the ability to keep people away too. If I want them to get off of me, there are a lot of different options that I can use so I can get some breathing room.
Sure. Well, my last question to you is more of a kind of an open thing, but we've talked a lot about the UAT and where we are in modern day and stuff like that. But one question I had for you was, and I forgot what it was while I was setting it up. Oh man. Okay, yeah, I remember now. So a big part of your fighting game identity, from my conversations with you, are where you post it up. So specifically shoryuken.com, right? And I was curious if you had anything to say on that front for our podcast, any shout outs to that crew, or like any comments on that particular part of your life.
The shoryuken.com part of my life?
Yeah, the forums, right? No?
Oh god, I was being I was a toxic lurker.
Okay.
I was looking, unfortunately, like I would be in the Arizona forums, but where I really was general discussion.
Okay, so we laugh about what general discussion was. Could you give me like a one sentence on like what what you're walking into when you go into that forum?
Well, this was around 2008, 2009. People were flamed. If you do not make an intro post in general discussion because you will get destroyed from your username to everything about your intro post is just gonna be torn asunder in the most creative, clever ways. Like that's really what it is. And less about the toxicity and more about how clever the jokes were, how clever the fighting community is. You guys are like the fastest photoshoppers in existence, and I work as a graphic designer. It's absolutely gorgeous and beautiful and horrible. God.
I took it as Shoryuken. I think of it as the precursor to R Kappa. If some of the modern folks want to get an idea of what it used to be like. I admittedly didn't get too much into that drama, honestly. I was mainly in the technical stuff, but
it wasn't my drama. That was what made it wonderful.
Fair enough.
I never commented or posted. I just read about it.
Yeah, we got like Frank Castle in the chat here talking about how he was in Tech Talk, and like we all had our own like little segments, right, of that forum, and only the bravest dare brave general discussion.
I was never in there. I was just in like the technical aspects of like Honda stuff, or it was just in the AZ community thing, trying to find where you guys were at, that kind of thing. I remember I would look through the AZ section here and there, and like there'd be drama or
our AZ thread was terrible. Like let's be real, like it was bad.
But like I enjoyed it, like for all the friendliness that of course I apparently enjoy drama, I guess. For all the friendliness and wonderfulness we had outside of it, like the interesting stories we could tell about the SRK forums,
That's the cool part is like for at least for the Arizona drama, like we would see it, and then you get to see what the reaction was offline, because eventually everybody had to meet up, right? Eventually, like someone had to pay the piper for what they put on the internet. And man, it was like there were some discussions that ended very, very fiercely. There were some discussions that ended up being like, let's just all laugh at them at the end. Like I remember there were a couple different incidents that require us to just like, or rather not required, but I went back and looked at them and was like, oh, this shit's hilarious.
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing though that we moved from SRK to Facebook when it came to meetups. Like your real government name and face were there. Your mother could see your post. It just had to be a way different vibe than being hiding behind your name and your whatever picture you decide to pick for that week.
I gotta say though, in like the past like 5 or 6 years, people have gotten pretty abrasive on Facebook. And, like real names be damned.
Well, yeah, that's a whole different thing.
Not mentioned in the chat. He says, I forgot to mention on my part, but some of the drama actually made him scared to join the tournament at Hazes. And like, I remember reading some of the drama that happened in there, and like it never made me scared, but like I think a lot of times I left before other shit went down. At least that's how it seems sometimes. Like I don't know if things got more hostile later, but
I mean, it comes back to our original point earlier, right? About like creating a welcoming environment for new people. And that's not fundamentally the same thing as like, because I would always run at odds with some of the OGs being like, you're just being too soft on them, like, on new people, stuff like that. And there is a degree of like, hey, like I don't want to waste my time on folks. Well, there's a better way to put that, but like, if I'm teaching people and they very clearly aren't going to show up and continue showing up, I don't want to waste my time. Like, and so like, there's a little bit of like, prove it to me that you're actually gonna take this seriously. There's a little bit of that, but that frequently meshes up with like comes at odds with creating a welcoming environment. I do think they can coalesce.
Yeah.
And one of those is like, making sure that it's a safe environment, making sure that people aren't dicks to each other.
And that's why I'm glad that we moved away from homes for major tournaments and things like that. I think that also helps it to affect. If you're in a place of business and random people are coming in and out to do business, you're gonna try to think
Hmm.
about what you're doing and saying a little bit more than if it's in a private home with private rules and things like that. Um,
Exactly.
Yeah. You got to know
and
if
also,
you're on good terms with the owner or not, right?
yeah.
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 Um, and then too, there you bring up a really good point about just the feelings of how OGs kind of did fighting games and how new people do them. And I personally seen that, like, the way that you take losing, the way that you take how fighting games fundamentally are, do kind of prove how you're gonna be moving forward. There literally is no coddling in fighting games. There, like we're talking about playing to win, but really there's no play to win. So if you take losing badly, and if losing badly is what's gonna stop you from playing fighting games, then I mean, what can we say to you? There's nothing. There's no amount of sugarcoating that part of it. So I get where the OGs are coming from, but for us newer people, just understanding that it doesn't all have to be like that. It doesn't all have to be hard. You can
Yeah.
Yeah.
lose and it can hurt your feelings, but everything else doesn't have to hurt your feelings too.
Yeah.
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 That's
That's a great point. Yeah, that's something I wouldn't say I struggled with, but it's something like I kind of see both sides too, because it's just like, yeah, I've definitely seen feedback from some of the newer people in the community where it's just like, yeah, these people are really abrasive, or there's a lot of trash talk, or there's this and that, and I'm just like, for me, I'm just like that doesn't phase me at all. I'm just like that's just part of like how I grew up and how I see things. But then like John's real good about bringing that perspective up too, and it's just like, well, this doesn't this doesn't make people feel welcome, and I was like, well, maybe they're not made out for this, but then at the same time, I'm kind of like, I gotta like reel it in, and I'm just like, I see what you're saying.
and to be clear, like I'm not even saying my answer is the right answer because I have been I have been rightfully criticized for coddling people too much in our scene. And there are times when I've actually seen that come out in tournament results of being like people not taking it seriously. So there's a fine balance, and I just like there are some objective things like you want to make sure that the environment is safe, you want to make sure the environment's friendly, and it's gonna be friendly to whoever joins the scene, whatever kind of gender, race, all that fun stuff is. Make sure it's inclusive.
Yeah. Um, I think that's why community is important, right? Because we can't do all this stuff ourselves. We're going to make decisions based on what we think is right. If we all talk to each other, we all get everybody's perspectives. What you're doing today is wonderful. You're getting all these different people's perspectives of the fighting game community and what they want and need and how they got into it. That gives us a better perspective on what we need to do moving forward for the next generation.
I appreciate the kind words there, and I think the perspective has the perspective is done in the context of time as well, where
Mm-hmm.
like we talk like. I talked about a little bit about how the OGs were like, say I coddle them too much, but a lot of times it's because it's built in their stance has been built from the time period that they were active in, and in the
Right.
same token for you, like you were active in the Dark Ages, right? And you got to see that renaissance from Street Fighter 4 and whatnot, and how you guys held yourselves in the community back then is completely different than how we held ourselves now,
Yeah.
right?
I think in some ways we're scared it's gonna go away or go back to the dark age. That's why I'm always afraid of games dying. So that's why I
Yeah.
try to if like King of Fighters 13 is the best game nobody played, and I understand they didn't have the online internet to help build that scene, but I just don't think it deserved to not have anyone come. So I always try to support and always try to tell people to come out, try it, buy it. The game is beautiful from the mechanics to the actual art and music and everything. So, but that's from me coming from a time where if nobody was playing it, it was gone, it was dead. You might as well say that it never was built, or.
I mean, like if you could think about like the top 5 games that need to have rollback added to them right now, I'd put KOF 13 as probably number 2, number 1 even.
What's number one?
Marvel 3 for me. I think Marvel 3 I think would benefit from rollback. I think Street Fighter 4 would as well. But I think KOF 13 would benefit more
Yeah.
from it.
Nice, nice. Yes. Before we close things out, did you have any shout outs or anything you'd like to promote at all, Neff?
I'll shout out my Instagram. There's nothing up there, but I'm hoping to get more art and more like crafty things that I'm looking to do in the future up there. I think my Instagram is like Nefertiti Jordan, just my name.
Is it one word?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll put it in the chat here.
And also, if you're watching and you're going to college, if you don't have a fighting game club, or if you're interested in the club, you haven't gone or tried it yet, please do so. Clubs are only able to exist because of the members inside them, the members that come and support, help out. If you don't have anything like that around you, create it, talk to people, try to get out there, because that's how the whole fighting community is ever able to survive right now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you never know the kind of friends and stuff that you'll make in those kind of circles.
Or the impact that you'll have on others along the way.
Mhm.
Cool. Well, I think that's gonna wrap up our show for today. Thank you very much, Neff, for being on. We can announce next week's guest, and that next week we're not going to have a guest. So we talked a little bit about like what the future of this show looks like, me and Benny, and we are going to create a season finale for you all next week, and basically go through everything that we've talked with for every guest up till this point. So what we're planning on doing is trying to create this overall timeline for Arizona, and we've got a whole slew of surprises to go over with you on that show. There'll be some visual aspects to it as well, but the goal, I think, overall with this podcast with season 1, we were trying to feel out what people wanted to listen to, and I think we've started to find some of that groove. So we're going to try to give you some more of that for season 2 for sure.
Yeah, so I don't know if we haven't determined yet if we're gonna take a break or how long of a break we might take. My schedule's gonna be changing here in November, but I won't know about that till like mid or beginning of October. I won't know what my schedule's gonna be, but yeah, we got some things to discuss. But yeah, I mean, one of the big things we did, or the reasons we're doing this, was I wanted to capture like kind of the history of the Arizona scene. I thought that was something that one hasn't been done, and I think it's important. And while those people are around, while people are here to talk to them, I think I talked to John about this in private, but there's it's just like there's the term of like giving people their flowers, and it's one of those things that it happens when somebody passes, right? It's just like now we want to talk about the good things that they did and the contributions they've made, and it's like there's something to be said, like, or something that I want to do in terms of like talking to those people now and giving people their flowers while they're here to hear it, and while they're here to give their feedback and tell their stories, and not just wait till somebody's gone and it's just like, oh man, let's talk about them and bring up their memories and stuff like that.
Yeah. And by no means do I want to say that like we're going away or anything like that. The break, if there will even be a break, is going to be just that, a break. And we have every intention of continuing for season 2. We've got a whole list of guests that we are interested in approaching. Like for example, like I haven't even talked about, we've talked a lot about our top players in Arizona, but we haven't talked about some of our highest placing, like top world renowned players like Angelic or like Latif or whoever. So hopefully we can have conversations with them in the future, but there's plenty on the horizon. We just are kind of putting a bow on season 1 here, I think.
Yeah, so definitely appreciate you guys that are tuned in. So we're gonna have that little kind of season 1 finale recap next Thursday at 5 p.m. when we go live. It'll be twitch.tv/Spiral Series as always, followed by YouTube at youtube.com/Spiral Series, and then on Spotify and Apple Podcasts under Absolute Guard. And then just again, if you are on Twitter, you can follow us on Twitter at absolute_guard. We'll be posting clips or whatnot, information there for those of you that want to follow along there.
Cool. All right, guys. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks,
have a good night.
Thank you for having me.